Welcome to The Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. In today's episode, I sit down with serial entrepreneur and retail salon industry visionary Ray Civello. We learn about his fascinating path to success, what enabled him to succeed over and over again, and his take on the future of this dynamic sector of the beauty industry. Ray, welcome to The Voice of Retail podcast. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing great, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Well, I was looking at your background, and I knew the name. Of course, your name is well known in these parts. I'm here in Toronto and in Canada, but I had no idea of your background that I know a little bit more about now. But I'd love for you to share that with the listeners, your personal professional journey, because it's been dynamic, it's been interesting. You're such an entrepreneur, so I'd love to just kind of get that essence of where you headed, what drove you, and let's start with let's go back a bit. Let's talk about your personal professional journey and where it got you to today.
Well, yeah, it's a great journey. I suppose everyone, it's not really succinctly planned, I wouldn't say, but I certainly wake up every day and I'm always grateful because it's never, ever boring. It's never the same. It's never predictable. I probably characterize myself as a creative entrepreneur. And I also am very proud to wear the title of hairstylist or hairdresser, if you like. And that's there's sort of been my passport, if you will, to enter a whole bunch of different worlds, beginning with, just learning how to cut hair and style hair very well enough to end up in Europe and Paris and working on collections and magazines and television commercials and music videos. So I had a career moving from a hair salon called the Rainbow Room back early 80s, which Toronto was a revolutionary salon, really. And from there, made my way to Paris. And while I was in Paris, doing a freelance job, which meant you worked 3 days and then probably had 6 days where you didn't work, and sitting in the Tuileries having my second café au lait and some kind of jambon and fromage sandwich of some sort. I realized that freelance was not at all what I was made for, and right. I like to work. I like to be active, and I realized that I could do something different. I was being represented by an agency in Paris, and realized that there had never been an agency back in Canada. So I got back to Canada and I opened up the first agency that represented freelance hair, makeup, wardrobe, props, photographers. So we were a one-stop production house. And from there, of course, all kinds of doors opened up, and I was managing talent and giving a lot of creative input on photo shoots and what have you. And 1988, there was a great recession. The advertising dollars disappeared pretty quickly. I had 40 people that were working pretty steady, and we were reduced to about 10. And that led to really, I had to take a pause, if you will, and I ended up going to the mountains and doing some introspective work and meditation work. And I got back and to Toronto and was out jogging one morning and came across a beautiful building on Yonge Street and thought, wow, that could be a salon. And I really hadn't worked in a hair salon for a good 5 years. So I didn't have a clientele to speak of or anything like that. But I saw a vision that was a little different than anything I'd seen before. And hairdressing at the time wasn't what I would have characterized as professional, and the service level was more self-indulgent than it was something that was provided for our clients. And I thought that we could do that and we could sell products at the same time, because I love stores. I love shopping. I love retail. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if we did a retail store and a salon together? And so I sat there and counted cars with my then founding partner's sister, Rafaela, and we called the agent up, and before end of day, we had signed a lease to open a hair salon on Yonge Street in the Rosedale neighborhood. And that's still there 32 years later. And that was the beginning of my journey as a sort of salon owner, retail, and salon services. And then we expanded into the spa business, well ahead of any curve. I think we were the first to ever combine hair and spa services in one facility and then have a complete offering of retail products under one roof. So that was a real innovation. And And obviously it worked very well. We were very, very successful, still very successful in spite of everything else that's still happening. It's still a beautiful place. The salon itself, interestingly enough, it was designed uniquely by a group of friends of mine, artists, rather than interior designers. So we created something very unique for people to come to, and then we had provided a service level that had never really been seen. A high touch, we're doing neck and shoulder massages, and,
Right.
Wonderful products, and bringing in a real wellness component to the hair experience as well as the spa experience.
It's really, as I listen to you talk about your journey, which you've kind of compressed, so to speak, nicely in time, the central themes start to come out to me anyway. I mean, you clearly had a talent, or so to speak, a trade, in terms of you started there, but the leap to being an entrepreneur is not for everyone. Like, were you always entrepreneurially or innovation oriented? Is that what made you a great hairdresser to begin with? But how did you make that leap? I mean, I'm kind of curious of unpacking, how you made your choices, or what are the kind of central themes that drove you in the direction you went? I mean, you're very successful in a business that is notorious for a lot of change, a lot of turnover, and it's a difficult business to innovate in.
Michael, yes, I would say yes. As far back as I can remember, at least, being a young boy, I had at one time, I think I had 6 paper routes going at the same time. I was, I developed them, and then I would sell them off and, go to another neighborhood and do it all over again. So,
okay, there we go.
My parents are immigrants from the beautiful island of Sicily, and my parents were entrepreneurs. They had a bakery, and then we had a pizzeria, and I worked in those environments. I watched my dad and mom each and every day as model mentors, if you will, and
strong work ethic. I mean, clearly there's a work ethic that comes along with all that, and learning at the table, literally and figuratively, right?
I'm trying to figure out how some folks today think that hard work isn't an ingredient to success. I want them to teach me, because I don't know it any other way. So, I grew up. I mean, I had a pop machine in the pizzeria and a pinball machine that I owned. So I've always been involved in some form of entrepreneurship, and so it wasn't. It's quite natural. I don't think about being an entrepreneur in that sense. It's just, I suppose, the way you're wired, and I do think entrepreneurs are wired a little differently. Yeah,
it is really the kind of the oxygen you breathe, right? I mean, as you say, I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and really it is that sense of not standing still, that sense of it sounds like you've done it a couple of times. You've seen something that wasn't available in your market, so to speak, all the way back to your agency, but then you pulled things together that people hadn't pulled together. This intersection of services and commerce, for example, you were pretty early in on that, right?
Yeah, I think that's what entrepreneurs do best, is they pay attention, and they have great sense of focus, and they're able to see things that others aren't, and connect different things in ways that perhaps someone else hasn't quite thought about yet. And then when you can present that and provide that as an experience for other people to have, that becomes enjoyable, that enhances lives, then you've done a good thing, and typically people will pay you for that. And that's the challenging part, the fun part, and the satisfying part.
There's a great story. I worked at one time for Rogers in the shopping channel on the retail side, and there's a great story about Ted Rogers, who I met a couple of times. How he saw people walking around with this box attached to their ear, a mobile phone. He came back all excited, and the board didn't believe him. They didn't think it, and even his wife voted against him. So he started his own mobile company. It's hard to imagine today. It must be the case, not just resilience, but also that kind of sure-mindedness. That you're on the right path. Does that come intuitively to you, or how do you assess if you're going down the right path when you pull all these things together?
Well, I believe that it formulates first. I think the concept formulates. You're always paying attention. You're always looking. Every entrepreneur has different resources that they use. I think they move those resources around. They're always trying to tap into a new channel of information somewhere to feed them. And I think that when it comes together, it has a chance. And then there's a testing process, where you try it out on different individuals that you trust. And once you have something that you believe in, you'll get a lot of naysayers. I mean, that's just normal, and you'll get Yeah, and quite frankly, I mean, every entrepreneur has doubts as well. I mean, while they're in the process of creating a concept, a product, a service, there's going to be doubt, and it's normal to experience that. But typically, they do push forward, and they get to the other side. And I think when everyone starts to provide them with that reflection of yes, you've created something we want. That's when they're satisfied, but then they start all over again. Typically, most entrepreneurs. I saw Ted Rogers speak once, and I remember him saying something to I think it was 45, and he had enough money, and he said, "I'm going to do it again, and roll the dice and try again." And he certainly didn't need to, but he actually did need to because that's who he was.
Well, and I can attest to his work ethic. I remember being in a meeting with him on the periphery, but he said, it's Friday and we don't get to see each other. It's the weekend, and he was genuine about it. He's like, "I'm going to miss you guys over the weekend." He was a 7-day a week guy. He was always like genuinely. What do you mean? Not everybody wants to be in the office over the weekend? Like, I want to work 7 days a week. Let's transition the conversation a little bit and pick up on current events. So we're in this COVID era. We often talk about in both retail and other areas, this great acceleration. In other words, the COVID era has accelerated some things. E-commerce is one of the things most often pointed to. In other words, there were trends that existed pre-COVID that the circumstances around COVID have accelerated, and then there's new trends that have just been created. And what's your perspective from your side of the business and your background? What was happening already that you saw coming that's just been advanced, if anything, and what's new? What do you think is going to come out of all this?
Well, I think the most obvious, of course, is the engagement of the consumer to digital transactions. I mean, that was happening, and it was happening quickly, and the behaviors were in place for it to continue to be so. And you're correct. I use that word accelerator all the time because I think today that world has changed completely, and I'm not really sure that there ever will be a bricks and mortar offering that will be as compelling enough to bring people back into the environments that, at least in the volumes that we've seen in the past. I don't believe that will happen again. In the beauty industry, which is a service, and you can't get your hair cut or colored, at least not yet. You won't be able to get a computer to do it. I'm sure that in the future that will happen as well. But at the moment, you're not able to do that. And what's the biggest trends that have taken place in our industry? I think it's always been a rather fragmented industry. It's made up of wonderful, independent entrepreneurs. The entrepreneurial spirit runs, really rich in the hairdressing industry.
Very much so. Yeah, very much.
And there has been, I think there's been a real interesting development. Probably the birth of the independent hairdresser has probably been the biggest change that's happened in our industry. That would be people that have left the salon environment to go and work on their own, whether that's renting a suite. There are now facilities that are called suites, salon suites. They're quite prevalent in the U.S., especially on the west coast of the U.S., but pretty much throughout the U.S. and now making its way. I think that trend is becoming a stronger trend in Canada as well. And chair rental salons. So a salon owner converts their commission-based salon where they were paying a commission to their hairdressers. They now would rent a chair to the consumer, to the client. They might not see that big of a difference in that environment as they would. Obviously going to visit someone in a suite, which would be just that individual and the client.
Yeah, clearly a different experience. Now, I mean, one of the things you mentioned, hair coloring at home, and I have to think back to some of the stats I was looking at in the early days of the crisis, where you'd look at these unusual items that had a lot of growth kind of waving through. Bread makers was one of the things. It's toilet paper actually is one of the things that first stood out. And then there's bread makers. But then my friends in department stores are saying we've never sold so much hair coloring before. Do you think that the advent of that is temporary, or do you think that people are going, hey, I can do this myself? Where do you sit on this? I mean, there's a lot of change going on in the industry. You talk about digital and digital enablement. Do you think there's both risk and opportunity there in your side of the business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I think everybody has to embrace digital in a bigger way. And I think independent salons, they were always resistant. And now I think they understand that, if they don't apply their thinking at least to all channels of opportunity, then I think they will be left behind. And we know that 30% of the industry will disappear through COVID. If they haven't already closed, they will be closing. We weren't able to operate at full capacity even when we were open, but many salons, again, are closed down for a second time, and in some cases, even a third time.
We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Veronica Sansev, co-founder of Commerce Next. On behalf of my fellow co-founders, Scott Silverman and Alan Dick, I'd like to invite you to join us for the Commerce Next Marketing Summit Series on January 20th, 27th, and February 3rd. A one-off to a smart start with this virtual conference featuring insights from top executives and e-commerce industry leaders, including Sephora, Wayfair, Untuckit, Red Antler, HBC, The Yes, Cartier, East Bay Champs, FTD, J.Crew, StockX, and many more. Learn more at commercenext.com. Registration is complimentary for retailers and brands. We hope to see you there.
So it will be difficult to get back to the levels of profitability. So profitability becomes a big issue, of course, in the salon. And hair color is the biggest profit center next to retail. Retail provides the biggest margin, right? But that's gone away. For argument's sake, that's really gone away for the most part. And I think that hair color was very interesting. Was one of the first items that showed up in discussions amongst my peers. Was do we take the risk of creating home kits and sell them to our clients with instructions, or do we not? We're professionals. This is are we crossing the line? And so the industry was actually divided on the issue. My point to it was, one, I want to make every effort to stay in touch with my clients, and I also want to be able to help them. And COVID was brutal, and it is brutal. That said, companies like Madison Reed, for example, who had come from outside the industry, was able to create an algorithm, if you will, to be able to prescribe great hair color and had a great product. And I believe they were somewhere around 60 million pre-COVID. They tripled those sales during COVID. Walmart said the two items they couldn't keep in stock were hair color and clippers because people were cutting their own hair at home. And
I think there's a big role, and I want to see if you've been thinking along the same lines of curation in the salons. You're professionals. You do what you do. Is there a role where you kind of introduce new products alongside the service, and then the rest is kind of done by replenishment? So I guess what I'm talking about is a hybrid, because that's how my last visit to a barbershop, I'm looking for a little pomade or a little product for my hair, and I said, what do you guys use? What do you recommend? And then I go buy it on my own directly from them online. Is that hybrid thing viable for you and the products and how you're thinking about it?
And not only viable, I think it's necessary. I don't know how they survive, or how if the manufacturers are the only ones selling online, then the salon is doing a great job at introducing someone to the product, but it's much more convenient to buy it online and have it, whether it's a subscription or whether it's just delivered home. It's just easy. I encourage salons to get involved and use every channel and to continue to provide service and retail to their clients. I just wanted to touch back on the hair color at home, because I didn't really answer, and I feel there's an important answer there. But yes, the trend I do believe it will continue to grow. I think there's a difference. I believe that you can get your roots, if you will, the new growth of your hair covered effectively, efficiently with a professional hair color that's been recommended by a salon. I would be cautious about just going to a drugstore and just pulling a box off the shelf and doing it's not the same and not the same quality. But I think this is an opportunity also where we're talking about retail and services blending together, where I think the salons could embrace becoming a retailer and also having an online service for people to consult with them and buy a pack that's been specially designed to be able to service those clients at home, because hair color is actually very complex. It's not really simple. It's very difficult, actually. And if you provide,
sure, not everybody's hair starts the same way, right? It's like everything else. There's a quality spectrum. You can color your hair at home, but it doesn't mean you're going to get the same quality experience of a professional looking at what the starting color and tones and textures are, right? I mean, that's probably what what guides the professionals into how and what they do, right?
That's right. And also the technique. And there's also the techniques and how they do. So what a lot of professionals would do is something much more complex in technique that you could never do at home. Right. But then you could maybe in between, just where the new growth, the gray might be coming in, you could touch that up in between and then come back and get, back with your hair. So I do think that there's a way to blend the two things together as a hair salon going forward. And I think it's an important opportunity.
And, I've been looking at different industries, retail, food service, restaurants, and many are thinking to use COVID, the COVID era, the COVID crisis as that time to sit back and say, the industry had evolved, or our format had evolved. We should leave in the post-COVID world. Sounds like we're going to be a post-COVID world by the end of 2021, at least. We should leave some things behind. We should leave some baggage behind. And what is that in your industry? Is it the reticence to merge commerce and product with service? Is that what should be left behind? Anything else you can think of?
Well, there's been so many new studios and salons that don't retail and have no interest in any retail at all. They've resigned themselves to, taking on creative space somewhere and not really necessarily looking at retail in any way as an opportunity. So I don't know how that goes. I don't know if that's viable. I don't think there's any expansion to that. I think that stays where it is. I don't know if you get new clients also from that environment either. And of course, we know we lose 10 to 15% of clients every year in a what we might call a normal year. So that you do always have to engage in getting more clients. But I think that when we come back and when we do get back to a place where, capacity and we start to measure, services and productivity, I guess, back to levels that we might have been pre-COVID. I mean, that's a year and a half to 2 years out for sure. Yeah. I do think that the high touch will be so much more appreciated. I mean, this COVID has produced a lot of abuse in homes and a lot of despair. And so I think wellness and high touch experiences, people that are in our profession who do this every day with kindness and craft combined, skills and kindness in their heart are really valued, much more so than everyone really understands. But it's something I think that we'll see more of, and I think what we might leave behind are those that don't do it that way. I think mediocrity in both mediocre efforts. I don't think there's going to be a lot of room for mediocrity. I think people have had time to reflect. I think people know what they want more so, and I think that people will become less tolerant of mediocrity. So
yeah, I've been having the same thoughts in the restaurant sector, right? I mean, we're talking about a bunch of things, but that, a lot of us are cooking at home way more, and we kind of have an appreciation for, on the one hand, how hard it is, how much work it takes, but on the other hand, hey, I can do a lot of that stuff. It better be good by the time I go out. It's a very familiar kind of narrative. One of the reasons we came together, you've launched a new product. So tell me about this color space. So it sounds like you're innovating again. And then the last question I'll talk about is tips for entrepreneurs. But let's talk about this color space. So you're getting into product. I think you've already been in product, but tell me a little bit about it.
Well, the world didn't need another hair color company, that's for sure. So, entering into the space was really important. I think to ask ourselves a lot of good questions about what are the problems with hair color professionally. What are the challenges that we wanted to address, and we went about it very methodically, and we've come up with a product that has a lot of innovation right into the science of it. So we really we have a molecular structure, for example, that's very unique. It comes from, pharmaceutical background and cosmetics background versus hair color background. So that perspective was able to go in and change the way that the molecules are built. So a smaller molecule basically means easier penetration and longer lasting. So less fading and then much better shine on the quality of the hair. So that's just a small innovation. Healthier, safer. We have an ammonia-free hair color line and then we're not the first to do ammonia-free, but ammonia-free has a reputation that has a weaker performance by nature.
There's a trade-off there. The reputation, I agree, is like there's a trade-off to be made, right?
And so we challenged ourselves to create something that that performed as well as any ammonia-based hair color would, and we've done it. So we're excited about that. We have a couple of really beautiful things that no one's thought of yet, like a machine that blends the color and heats the color to body temperature, because color doesn't begin to process until it hits your scalp. It has to warm up to the scalp temperature, and it has to be mixed really well for the coupling to occur, for the chemicals to really activate. So when those chemicals don't activate because somebody doesn't stir it up or mix it up properly, those chemicals are what causes that irritation on the scalp and the thermal shock that you get because it's cold and your scalp has to heat it up. So we have a machine that heats up to a creamy, rich texture, which is easier for the professional to use. There's also a lid on it, so there's not a disbursement. If you're using ammonia, it doesn't disperse ammonia into the air. And you're using less product as well, so it's a more profitable application per application cost savings. And at the same time, it's not the client is not experiencing sensitivity or irritation on the scalp. So these are some of the things that we did, and we created a business model, a virtual business model, which no one has yet done in our industry. So it's a B2B business model, providing profitability at a level that the hair salons have never seen before.
So for the listeners at home, it's obviously not an at-home kit. Sounds quite suitably complex and professional. Where would they learn more about where they can find this product, or who carries it, or how could they learn a bit more?
Our website is colorspacehair.com, and we officially will be launching on January the 11th, 2021. Just to give you an idea, in 3 weeks, we've had 500 salons inquire. We've been able to do 100 presentations thus far.
Oh, wow.
And we've had, of the 100, we've had 92 conversions, if you will, or salons that are absolutely really excited to take the product on. So it's going very well so far.
Well, congratulations. Last question for you. Leave us with, the lifetime of entrepreneurial pursuits. You just launched another successful pursuit with Color Space. Give me one or two tips for the listeners for 2021. What should they do? 2 starts and 1 stop. They should start doing these 2 things if they're not already. And stop.
Michael, if you, in 2021 or any other time, I've always said be flexible. We have to be agile to be able to pivot very quickly. We've got to pay attention and find new creative ways to deliver our products and our services. And I say the second thing I would say is, and maybe second and third real quickly, I would say listen to your customer. The customer is voting on whether you're going to be successful or not, and they need to be included in the equation of what you're creating. It used to be you could tell them what they were going to get, and I'm a strong believer of include them. You're going to get great ideas as a result. By the way, you'll take you on a better journey, and you'll produce better results. And then fail because you're going to. And when you do and fail, just fail fast and apply the knowledge even faster.
If you would say to an entrepreneur, you should stop. I see you doing these kind of things. I see this in the industry. Stop doing that to be successful.
I'm a big supporter and a proponent of stop being mean. Stop being mean to yourself. Stop being scared. Be kind to yourself and take better care of yourself, and then take better care of the wonderful people that have chosen to work with you. That's what I would say. I see a lot of entrepreneurs becoming central in their focus and
hard charging and task driving and all those kind of things, right?
That Gordon Ramsay approach is it's not conducive to creating wonderful cultures of people who want to come to work every day, who are excited to make a difference with you, and that you want to make a difference. You want to create cultures that do that. But I would say it starts with you. Fall in love with you first, and then you can fall in love with others. You got to be kind to yourself.
Well, Ray, it's great advice for the times, and great advice no matter what time it is. Congratulations on your success, and I wish you all the best, continued success with the launch of Color Space and all the salons and the skills that you bring. And thank you for bringing your insights and thoughts to listeners here on the Voice of Retail podcast. It's been a real treat getting to know you and your business and catching up. And once again, thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much, Michael. It was a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into today's episode of The Voice of Retail. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out on the latest episodes, industry news, and insights. And if you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a rating review, as it really helps us grow so we can continue to get amazing guests like Ray onto the show. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, president of M.E. LeBlanc Company, Inc. And if you're looking for more content or want to chat, follow me on LinkedIn or visit my website at meleblanc.co. Until next time, stay safe and have a great week.